It's very easy to explain what it's about. Actually applying it turns out to be a bit harder. Now, what is one of the things that really fits really well is that with applying objectives and key results is that you typically determine what those objectives and key results will be on a quarterly basis, so on a shorter cycle than a typical yearly cycle. And that you actually try to track progress on where you are on a bi-weekly basis. This is one of the common practices, right? And bi-weekly is typically something that you already do when you use Scrum. So there's a quite nice fit if you have this iterative approach of applying Scrum and then also seeing where you are each and every iteration, each and every sprint. And a normal place to do this in Scrum would be the sprint review, right? Rather than talk about the features that we delivered, we can actually talk about the impact that we achieved by delivering these features. And that's a very central notion. Instead of focusing on all the things that we're doing, we're actually focusing on the thing that we're influencing, the thing that we actually making change. So, for example, on the previous example, when we're building an app for promoting walking in city for city dwellers, you could see that at the beginning of the quarter, we're at 10%. The goal is 20%. And for the percentage of chosen city routes, we're at 5%. We want to go to 10%. And as we check in on a regular basis, we can see whether these numbers are actually moving. And sometimes we see them move a little bit, and sometimes we're successful. But very often we also see we're not successful, and that's fine, right? We establish these goals, but we also try to learn from establishing these goals, whether, well, the things that we're doing have effect on them at all, or whether we're maybe too ambitious to do some of this. See, end of the quarter, 8%. Well, that's not the end of the world. Maybe we can learn something. Why did we only achieve 8%? There might be reasons for that we can use when we establish goals again. What we really try to do is remove the focus from all the output that we deliver to actually the outcomes that we can achieve from the influence that we have on what our stakeholders, everyone outside our organization, can do, right? So here are a couple of examples of outputs. We could buy a Google Ads campaign for city dwellers. We can buy more city routes for route provider XYZ. And we can create more extensive filtering on routes. This happens very often, but what's wrong with it? Why would this be a bad idea? Anyone has a suggestion?
It doesn't say whether our users will love the app. Yeah, it's just some activities. But we can do them, but we are not sure whether we achieve what we would like to achieve with satisfaction.
Exactly. So we might celebrate the fact that we have we managed to buy extra routes from this route provider, or we have built this really cool feature where you can filter on all sorts of different levels. But then once we implement it, we might not have any effect on the real goal that we established, and that's getting more city dwellers to use our app to pick up routes, right? A little history on OKRs. They're quite common these days, but they're actually quite old as well. They've been around for ages. Andy Grove pioneered them at Intel. He actually, it wasn't his original idea either. I think he got it from Peter Drucker, management by objectives, but then tweaked a little bit. But he was very successful at Intel at implementing them. At the same time, John Doerr worked at Intel with him, and for a while he actually was part of Intel, but at some point he left Intel and he helped Google move out of the garage and into like a big office building. And Google at the time was growing really fast, and it didn't have a whole lot of structure. And John Doerr said, well, maybe I have a gift for you. These OKRs might help you to sort of channel the growth that you have in mind. And it turned out to be a fantastic tool for Google to manage the growth of their organization. And I think they're one of the the best examples of how OKRs are applied. Not every organization is Google, of course, so be careful with just mimicking the behavior of another organization. But for Google was a really good idea, and that's why I think some people really think that OKRs originate from Google, but they're actually quite older. And there's the whole notion of just setting goals on a regular basis and checking where you are. It's not new either, right? It's not like nobody ever thought of that before. By now, there are also quite some books to read about OKRs. Maybe you've heard about this book before, Measure What Matters, written by the original author, by John Doerr himself. In my opinion, it's not the best book. There are some really interesting stories to read about it. But there are also some examples of OKRs that are a bit shady if you would be a bit more strict about it. So another interesting book to read is this book, Radical Focus by Christina Wodka. It's more like a business novel, so it's more like a story that is being told rather than actually going into the details. But along the line, you pick up a lot of good ideas about OKRs. And the document I would really recommend anyone to read is just a Beginner's Guide to OKR by Felipe Castro. It's only a thin booklet. It's free. You can just download it, and it sort of has the essences of OKR. The thing with it is that it's like there's no canonical definition of what OKRs are, right? There's no organization that certifies you as a formal OKR organization or individual or whatever. So it's very adaptable in that sense, but then also there are some examples that if you think about it a little harder, you might agree that they would actually not bring a lot of benefit to an organization, although like they seem to be very practical. Particularly at Intel, the example that John Doerr also gives in his book is for Operation Crash. Around the time that Intel came out with their first microprocessor, or more competitors, Xilinx was one of them. And Intel was about to lose some of their business, and then Andy Grove launched this objective for the whole organization. Let's focus the whole organization on making sure that we don't lose from Zilog, and that we become the most successful chip company. And they actually managed to do that, right? So the objective was to establish the 8086 as the most popular 16-bit microprocessor. So you can imagine this is quite old, right? So you had 8-bit microprocessors. You had the Intel 404. 404, that was a 4-bit microprocessor. This was like a big leap forward, but Intel really had to work very hard to establish design wins. So the design win means that some company agrees to use your microprocessor for whatever product they're making. This is a very old example. A quite recent one that I saw from Google video was for Elsevier, a publisher of medical papers. Well, not medical papers, but scientific papers, but also medical papers, right? And actually showed an example of how they used to be and actually how much they improved them. And that's quite interesting because not very often you get to see how people actually, start off with OKR and then actually improve them. Very often as a coaching engagement, I also am involved in improving OKRs, but then the organizations typically don't allow me to share like whatever they were before. But in this case, they're very open about it. So they had an original objective of improving the user experience on journal pages. And the key results was add access info to the journal archive page and test new mobile designs with users. And on the surface, this doesn't sound unreasonable, but if you think about it a little harder, you will probably agree with me that these are just outputs. These are things that you do, but not actually things that you influence. And then they were able to improve them after they learned we're basically just building to-do lists. And the improvements were quite large, actually, think about it, right? Say they changed the objective in protect the crown jewels. This is also a very common theme. What does this mean? Well, it doesn't matter if you understand it or not. It's very needs to make sense for the people that actually are involved with the work, right? And the crown jewels in this case means Elsevier makes the most money of access to these scientific papers. So they want to make sure that only people that are allowed to have access to it, right? And these were the key results. They were changed a little bit, but they wanted to reduce the illicit access from X to Y. So they wanted to avoid people to just reuse accounts that they share within the organization. Only licensed users are allowed to get access to those papers, right? They also wanted to reduce the support tickets related to stopping illicit access. You can imagine that if you just want to only allow allowed users to get into it, you can just say, well, okay, let's give every user a capture test. So they have to test. We need to establish if they can identify traffic lights or the stairs or the boats or whatever. And that way you can be sure that only like allowed users have access to these papers. But this would be like a draconian measure. Users would hate it. So they actually had like a balancing key result to make sure that they would reduce the capture pop-ups from X to Y. And this is a pretty common practice, right? If you over-optimize on one perspective, that would actually be detrimental to your business. So sometimes it helps to think about, okay, do we have a balance of these key results? Aren't we just attracting new customers at the cost of, well, actually the lifetime value, right? We're spending all the money on Google AdWords to get people in, but we're not making enough money to actually pay for the bills. So this is not sustainable in the longer term. So I want to try a little exercise with you. I mentioned the difference between outcomes and output a few times. So I want to have you try a little bit with that. If you can spot the difference. For that, we're gonna use a Google Sheet. I'll share the link to the sheet in the chat. See the chat. You have to share. Yeah, there it is. Okay, if you can all join that Google Sheet, then I'll create a few breakout rooms. How many people are we right now? 25?
We are 19.
19? Okay,
yeah.
then I'll create a bunch of breakout rooms, and I'll make sure that we have I don't know, like maybe 4. I'll just create 4 sheets. So I'll assign you to a breakout room. You just get a number, and the idea is that you work together with the other people in the breakout room on a particular tab, right? So we have. Let me just show you briefly. So you know what you're supposed to do. With 4 tabs. For each breakout room, there's one. And as a team, you need to decide whether these statements are either an objective, a key result, or an initiative. If you do it correctly, there's 7 in each column. So I'm going to start a timer of like 10 minutes, and so at 17:35, yeah, we're going to come back and we're going to see whether you managed to classify them correctly.
Yep.
Clear what you're supposed to do?
Mm-hmm.
One sense, okay. Then I'll start the breakout rooms, and okay, I think everyone is back, right? Yeah. Apologies, I just noticed that this is actually the version I used in Japan, so that's why takoyaki are like fried squid balls, and most of the other things that actually happen in Japan.
Yeah,
I also have like
we could see it, yes, Bas, that you are a big fan of Japan.
absolutely. Your minutes as well. Most of you got like 7 in there. Yeah, nice. So let's see how you did. So I'm entering the magic value to see which ones color red and which ones are black. And it seems that you almost all got them right? Oh, okay. A few mistakes.
There are some lines we were unsure, so there are double ones also.
Okay, but it adds up to 7 in this case. Well, I'm just going to go from the back. Our gardening podcast becomes the #1 in Yokohama. Yeah, that's
So
one in
it's a
5
key
new customers. It's a key result. Maybe there's something wrong with the. These seem to be fine, right? The only ones who notice this, even. Yeah, this will be a key result. Even people from Osaka stand in line among tourists.
This should be objective, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
here this one has 8, right? So that's a clue. Placing an order will succeed on average with just 7 interactions in the app. Yeah, that is a key result because you can count it, right? You can count the interactions, and it's perceived from the outside in. Now I have to warn you, these are thought up to make them a bit more difficult to have you think about them. And for example, 1 in 5 new customers are referred to us by existing customers. Would that be an objective key result or an initiative? I would say it's a key result. Yeah. Our fraud detection system will be replaced by the #1. Yeah, I agree. These are made a bit confusing, right? But this is not actually something you affect, but this is just something that you do. So this will be an initiative. And the reason why it's important to make that distinction is because initiatives are very easy to do, but very difficult to prove whether you actually contributed to the objective. So that's why good key results are defined from the outside in. All right, this is just a little bit of a warm-up. So you did really good. Most of them were right, so good job on that. So objectives should be ambitious and inspiring, but not measurable, and key results should be measurable. Maybe they're not that inspiring because sometimes they're just about numbers, but they at least prove that you accomplished your objective. An initiative is just something that you do, right? It's something that you do in order to achieve the key result. That's the way to think about it. It's on the way to getting there. Now, OKRs can exist on several levels in your organization. An organization can have a company objective, like Intel, for example, to achieve 2,000 design wins. But also in other organizations, you can have a company objective to become more popular with a younger target group. And the key result might be that you increase your market share among people in the 20s from 10% to 15%. That's sensible. And that can be applied as a different objective and key result, for example, for a marketing team. That will define a new objective that says, well, our online campaigns are a hit with a younger target group. And one of the key results would be that their TikTok videos get 10,000 likes. On the other hand, the product development group have a different objective, and they say, well, our product is loved by young people, and we would achieve that if we increase our net promoter score among 20-something users from 40 to 50, which is really, really good, right? So you can define it on many levels, and you can have like one objective for the whole organization, or just one department can have an objective and key result. Typically, the way that you see this happening is that the organization already has some sort of structure, right? There's already something in place. It's not like there's nothing there, now all of a sudden we add objective and key results in place. But there usually is a reason why the company exists. Maybe there's even a mission and a vision. And there's usually like an annual planning cycle where we set objectives for the year. And maybe we have a few objectives. And then very commonly, we set objectives for quarters. If not that, then at least we have objectives like at the beginning of the year and just before someone realized that we were a bit too ambitious or a bit too vague about the things that come later. And we have those from multiple quarters, of course. And objectives and key results fit really nicely with this high level planning on a quarterly basis. So you can have a quarterly objective, and of course you might have more, but one of the nice properties of objective and key results that they bring a lot of focus. Right, this is the most important thing. Instead of saying everything is important, this quarter we're going to focus on one particular thing. And then we have a few key results that define success, and well, there are ideas how we can achieve that key result, and those things we like to call initiatives, but there's no formal name for them. What makes objective and key results different than, for example, management by objectives is that if you apply them well, then you typically don't cascade them. So it helps a lot if people are involved in actually composing their own objective and key results. And that achieves a lot more alignment than you get otherwise, because if you give somebody else an objective and key result, well, then they weren't really involved in defining them, so their ownership will also be less, right? If you are involved as an individual, then you can define your own objective and key results, and maybe they're not aligned with the rest of the company, and that's just information for the rest of the company that maybe we need to work on alignment a little bit. A nice example of that is Booking.com, right? You know, they're a pretty successful organization. And at some point, Airbnb got onto the market, but they were working in a different market, right? Booking.com was selling hotels, Airbnb were focused on apartments. Now, Booking.com could consider, well, what do we want? What are we going to do? Are we going to just leave that market to Airbnb, or do we also want to compete with them? And they decided to compete. So Booking.com focused on getting apartments on their platform. And one of the things that they did in Amsterdam is that they put saddle covers. This is just like the marketing department somewhere in Amsterdam to get a lot of newspaper attention. They put saddle covers on bikes where students would frequent. So they made the students aware that they could put their apartment on Booking.com. Now, there's some legal sides to that are completely well thought out. But the point here is that there was a lot of liberty at Booking.com to think about ways that you could achieve that more like granular goal, that bigger goal of Booking.com of making sure that there are also apartments on their platform. Another thing they did, of course, is change the registration or the search form, basically, where you can specify that you're just looking for an entire home or an apartment as opposed to a hotel room. And this moves around along a lot. So if you look at their page right now, it might be different. So it can really help align across a broad organization without having very specific objective and key results for those parts of the organization already. I want to switch gears a little bit and have you exercise with defining an objective and a key result, actually a key result, for a sample organization. This organization is called Polyglotti, and here we have an elevated pitch for what they're supposed to do. They're a platform for people who want to learn another language. It's online, and they try to connect people that want to learn a language with people that speak the language as their first language, which, other than reading books or watching videos, provides more interesting conversations and motivates people to get better at the language. This is a format that's very common to define. Elevator pitches sort of summarizes the key points of what this proposition has. Now, Polyglotti is just a platform. They sell individual sessions with accredited teachers or like just people that want to earn a little extra money. But they found that some competitors are also offering group lessons. So what Polyglotti wants is that instead of like offering courses for like 20 euros, 40 euros, we get to a lower price point of 10 euros, 16 euros when you actually participate in a group lesson. So that's the key point of attention for this particular quarter. So here we have the objective. I'm going to give you that. So the objective for Polyglotti is that they become a major player in the field of English group classes. So there's already focus here, right? We don't want to have all languages, but we're just going to focus on English because that's well, the thing that we are good at, or we have a lot of teachers at already, or there might be some reasons for that. And this is where you come in. You're going to provide some consulting by helping us define at least three key results for this objective. So I'm going to break you out in rooms again. Let me prepare the spreadsheet again. So again, we're going to use the same sheet. There are new tabs there. For each breakout room, there's one. So pay attention to the breakout room that you're in. If you're in breakout room 4, you work on the tab with key result number 4. Okay. Mm-hmm. And you can just, you all used the spreadsheet before, right? So try to define a few key results based on this objective of becoming a major player in the field of English group classes. Right? Clear for everyone? All right. Then let's start the breakout rooms.
How much time do you have? 10 minutes as well? Or?
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah. Thank you. I think we're good, right? Yeah. Okay. Good luck. See you in 10 minutes. So I see you all managed to get a few key results in. Let's see if we can learn something from them. So well, at least they're all from X to Y, right? So the first one, yeah, clearly that's a key result. The problem with like market share is typically that they're quite lagging, right? So imagine if you do like bi-weekly check-ins and you see, okay, are we already market share Y? Well, you need the rest of the market as well to understand whether you're doing well or not. So these are typically more like annual goals. We want to increase your market share from 20% to 25% or 30%. But if you look at it on a regular basis, it's very difficult to see any sort of progress in this area. Daily active users, that's fine. Every time users spent in the app from 2 to 3 minutes. These are pretty good key results. They're just not very much related to in the field of English group lessons, right? So the idea was to define some key results that would define success at becoming a major player in the field of English group lessons. And 10 million group sessions in Q1. Would that be a key result, or would that be an initiative?
I think it can be a key result in case we understand that the market cap in this field is in groups, English group sessions, in English group classes, like
yeah, okay.
Yeah, 100 million sessions.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but it makes sense. Yeah. The lifetime value by users for 25%. Yeah, I think that it's the same kind of like the market share. It really helps to define key results that are more leading than lagging. To think of things that might be an early indicator that you're on the right path, because otherwise it's very difficult to actually track progress on them. And traffic increased by 50% in each of our top 5 countries. How would that help us becoming a major player in the field of English group classes? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that was my idea. I thought that it's in terms of like presence and market share that we can acquire. In terms of metric, I just choose the traffic increase.
Right. And I think so. If you if you want to improve, like on the key result, it might actually be defined more from the perspective of the participants on the platform, right? So maybe the teachers can accomplish more, or the student can accomplish more. This is just a gross number, but this could be anything, right? Maybe we have a major outage, and well, then our traffic is going to increase because they finally can get our platform again. So it helps to be a bit more specific. They're not like bad in any sense, but I think they could be a bit more specific. Yeah, so the number of people who joined English group classes increases from X to Y. Yeah, followers on social platform raised above X, and search and criteria below 3, putting us on top search. So being part of the top search results, I would assume, like on organic search. Yep. All right, and all right, we increased September previous of a month. Yeah, so I think that second and the third are okay. We increased the number of group classes per month from 200 to 1100. If we have like an 1100 group classes and nobody attends them, then we still don't have achieved success. That's why we need to be, sometimes we need to focus on having some balancing key results in place as well, because otherwise, if we just open the platform for every teacher, then all of a sudden we have 10,000 English classes, all with like one attendant, or they're all being cancelled, and we have unhappy users. So typically, a way to sort of improve gradually on your key results, just ask, okay, so why is this important? At the auto say you need to ask why 5 times. I think that's a bit much. But just think, okay, so why would this be a good idea to do? And then typically you find that you find something that's obvious, and then that might be the next step. All right. So let's move on. Of course, I have some examples as well that I want to share with you. So this is what I came up with in terms of key results for specifically focused on these English group classes. So 10% of our experienced English teachers offer a group lesson. We already offer group lessons. We already offer lessons for individuals, but we also want to we want to have our existing teachers also teach these group lessons. The average fail rate of a group class is 80%. 10% of new students take a group lessons. 6% of group lesson students book a second lessons from the same teacher. And then we also defined what an experienced English teacher would be. Right? That also helps to sort of be more clear about what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so very often you see OKRs applied in situations where you already have key performance indicators. And sometimes I get asked, what is the difference between the two? Sometimes people say, well, that's already a key result, or that's already a KPI. So which is which? In general, KPIs are more stable for the longer term, right? They're like your dashboard. You want to make sure that a certain number doesn't go below a certain number. Otherwise, we need to do something about it. So OKRs are much more target oriented. That's why you establish them each quarter, because there are new priorities that we need to adapt ourselves to. And to give you an example, here's some KPIs examples. So the number of students, new students per month. So we need to have a steady flow of these anyway. Percentage of students per month dropping out, the attrition, average rating of classes. For the teachers, it could be the number of new teachers per month that we sign up, or the average price of classes, or the percentage of teachers that actually drop out because they don't have enough business on our platform. Or for the organization itself, it could be things like, okay, we want so much revenue or so much profit, or the marketing costs shouldn't be too high, or the conversion rates should be at this point, not somewhere else. And we can typically see that these are things that need to be stable for a certain time, or they need to grow at a certain incline. And if they don't, then an OKR might be in place to actually remedy that. For example, the percentage of students by month that drop out. It's fine in the first few months, but then after April, we see that there's a change and people start dropping out in bigger numbers. So the KPI stays the same. We don't want like so many users to drop out, but for this particular situation, we define a new objective. New students book a subsequent class immediately after their first lesson. And it brings focus to the organization. So we know this is an important thing to address. And the key result might be, well, the average percentage of students taking a second lesson after a first lesson from the same instructor goes from 30% to 50%. And the thing here, of course, is that these it really helps if these things are like leading indicators, right? If we don't need to wait too long. So if we, for example, use NPS to define success here, it might take too long to find out that what we're doing is still not working. So we try to find things that are an earlier indicator that we're on the path to success. And here's another one. Average student rating of a first lesson increases from 4.5, from 4 to 4.5. And that also defines success. Now, I mentioned before that there's a really nice fit between Scrum and OKR. So if you're already working in an iterative fashion, you can sort of wrap the whole of Scrum inside objective and key results. And then track the progress of OKR in the sprint reviews with the stakeholders that are involved in it, and use them to plan the next sprint based on the results of the last iteration. So that's also a reason why it helps to have early indicators as key results rather than things that are lagging. Of course, this all depends on how often you're able to release. So if your Scrum implementation only allows you to release every few months, then that by definition dictates a lot of the cycle that you use with OKR as well, right? So these need to be lined up. If you're not able to do regular releases, then it doesn't have a lot of, doesn't fit a lot of, doesn't give a lot of benefit to regularly look at these OKRs because they won't change. But if you work in a different context where it's much easier to make these changes, then more frequent feedback is really helpful. Okay, so I wanted to try another exercise where you estimate value, and I want to move towards like a different way of looking at using OKR to prioritize. So in the next exercise, we're going to sort different things, different initiatives that we can do by value. There's all sorts of choices that we have when it comes to initiatives, but if we order them in terms of how much value they will bring, that will be really helpful. And then after you divide them by value, maybe we can assign value of how much we can assign values to how much value they provide relatively. So the idea here is that we have a new tab that I'm going to add it first. Sorry. I'm going to add a new tab in the spreadsheet so that you try to group, like sort these different work items in order of value that they provide. and then add these numbers afterwards. Just a technique to estimate the value when you're at the point of making choices about what it is that you're going to spend your time on doing. So let me show you. Oops. So for example, as a student, I see a calendar overview with group lessons for the next 4 weeks from selected teachers, so that I can more easily find a suitable time. That might be one. Or as a teacher, I can offer lessons of 45 minutes or 90 minutes instead of like 60 minutes. The idea is that we take these group lessons, become a major player in the field of English group lessons, again, as our objective. And if you think about it, which item would be the most valuable, you think, in achieving that key result? If you think it's item N, then you would start with N, and then maybe if you think it's like K next and L next, that's fine. Once you've found 10 of those, try to see which one has the most value, and then maybe assign that, or maybe take the one that has the least value, assign it value 1, and then look for the one that sort of progressively adds more value, and assign values to those. So you use it basically as a technique to assign relative value for different backlog items in this case, or Scrum, but you would apply like the same technique in any sort of way where you define the sort of work items that you would perform to achieve these key results. Understood? Do you know what it's supposed to do? So these items, you need to only do 10 of them, and then we can come back and see. You have to only sort 10 of them and then assign value to them, and then we'll look afterwards whether there's some sort of pattern here. So we need to prioritize the work for.
Yeah. So higher number is a higher value, and we can use Fibonacci or something like that.
That's fine. Yeah, exactly.
And what's the objective or key result for this?
It's the same objective. So we want to become a major player in the field of English group lessons.
Okay, yeah, got it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's going to be the theme for the next 2 exercises.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that's the same Excel or the same sheet?
Yeah, it's the same sheet. I just need to, I think the other tabs are already there, right?
And a higher number in this case does not mean more complexity, but more value.
No, it just means more value, and complexity is just not something that I would recommend using as estimation technique anyway, but we're just focusing on value. So this is something that if you use this in a Scrum setting, you would do with stakeholders, right? Let's try to agree on what provides the most value in the setting. Because from a Scrum perspective, if you're as a product owner, you're supposed to prioritize the product backlog on the thing that provides the most value. But how would you define value? Well, let's see if you can find a way of defining value in your setting.
Okay, so one would be a low-hanging fruit, but provide some value maybe, or like a very small value, but you would actually try to get a 40 story or whatever inside.
Yeah. Exactly. So I only focus on the value part. You used to actually think about the cost part of it, but now let's just think about the value part of it.
Okay.
All right. I'm gonna move. Tom, I can't move you, Tom, right? But I can move Vika to. Oh, actually, there's only Tom in the. So that's quite hard to do, right? To sort of decide on what is the value of. I just wanted to give you like let you struggle with it a little bit, but it's quite difficult to sort of agree on what sort of value do we assign to these things. For that, I want to talk about something else that's closely related, value requirements. I've done a lot of training with Kai Gilp. He's the son of Tom Gilp. He's sometimes called the grandfather of Agile because he already started iteratively delivering product value back in the 70s. His like his best book, I would say, is Competitive Engineering. It's just very difficult to read. It's a very dense book, but it has a lot to say about how you define value. His son made an attempt to also write a book about it, but he just has a draft manuscript, which is a lot more accessible, I would say, than the book. But the central notion here is, and the central tool that I want to share with you, is something called a value decision table that actually helps you make those decisions if you want to prioritize based on the value that you perceive, or if you have like different choices that you can make when it comes to the things that you do. Now, sorry. There's this saying in Dutch that you can't compare apples and pears, and I think in Germany they say the same, and even in Denmark it's I think it's apple pear, something like that. So we have this idea in American English. You can compare apples and oranges, right? Like it's a ridiculous thing to do, right? You have apples, you have pears, you have oranges, and they're different. Well, they're different in certain ways, but also have similarities. And it's actually something that you do every single time you walk into a supermarket, right? You compare things to other things. But if you define different qualities of the product, you could say, well, there are different levels of taste, right? Maybe you like pears better than you like apples. In nutritional value, they're also different. You can actually quantify how much they achieve the goals that you're trying to accomplish, or if you want to keep them for a longer time, the shelf life will really help. Apples typically stay good for a longer period than pears. Overall, you can also see what their overall value would be by just adding all these numbers together. If you change them to percentages, it's very easy to add them up. And then you could say, well, the value provided by pears is the highest, but the cost is also something that we need to factor in. And we used to assigning cost, right? We have story points, complexity points, and many ways to think about the cost that is associated. But the value association is a lot more difficult. But if you do it this way, right, you think of the different product qualities, and how much they actually help you achieve your goal. These decisions become a lot more easier because you could actually say, well, let's just divide the value by the cost, and then we have like a relative measure of what provides the most value. And if we do it like this, and these are the things that we find important, then the apple would be the clear winner. And we can apply the same thing to our kinds of work, right? This is where key results fit in really nicely, because you could create a value decision table based on this goal that we have to become a major player in the field of English lessons. And then you can actually score this backlog item. As a teacher, I may cancel a class up to 12 hours before the start in case of only 1 or 2 registrants participants get their money back. Right? That's one of the things that we could do to attract more English teachers for group classes. We know the cost, the story points. If we think about it, then maybe we say, well, the percentage of experienced English teachers offering group classes, how will this be affected? Well, then maybe it will be a positive thing, quite a bit positive actually. The average fill rate would be improved a little bit, and well, that's about it. Now maybe, well, the percentage of students who book a second lesson with the same teacher after the first lesson might actually go down because they have a bad experience because, well, at the very last moment, they got cancelled. And you can do the same thing for another backlog item. As a student, I can take monthly subscriptions for 1 class per week, so I pay less in total per class, and I'm more motivated to keep going. Okay, well, it costs a bit more to implement it, but then it would have a positive effect on the average fill rate of group classes because we know in advance how many people are going to join. And we will think it also affects the percentage of new students taking group classes because there's a price incentive. And then like booking the second lesson is going to be obvious because you plan in advance. And this is such a powerful technique that I want you to practice with this as well. So that's going to be the last exercise. We're going to fill the number, not actually the dots, but just the number, because now we have a spreadsheet. These things become a lot easier. in the different columns, so we can calculate which of the choices are the best, right? So in our case, we can use the the fourth step of our spreadsheet. And you can just say whether, like, from 1 to 5, how much effect does this have on this particular key result? The percentage of experienced teachers offering group lessons, or the average fill rate of group lessons, etc. And that's just a few items. So let's, can we run up a little bit, or do we, does everyone have a hard stop?
Yeah, I'm okay to run a bit.
Okay, so I'm just gonna.
I have to leave. Yeah, sorry, just one
Alright.
person.
Thank you. I'm just gonna start like 2 breakout rooms, so we can practice with it a little bit, and then maybe we'll just spend 5 minutes on it, and then we'll wrap it up. So we'll only run off for a few minutes. Okay.
Yep.
Hello, welcome back.
Hello.
So, yeah, some of these things really pop out, right? This has a value of 10 plus the cost that it provides. So it makes a lot of sense to first focus our efforts here. And then maybe do this one next, because it's also pretty cheap. The thing to realize here, of course, is that all these numbers here are all estimates. So we actually need to spend some time also seeing what the effect is of the work that we do. The other group also got pretty far. Yeah. Okay. So and then also I think it's a different item. This actually the same item, 9 points. So you got to the same sort of conclusion that this is the low-hanging fruit that we can pick up. But this is a very powerful tool. Maybe not the thing that you were looking for on a Wednesday evening to stick your teeth into like a spreadsheet. But I think it's such a powerful mechanism that maybe it brings some benefit to you. I know I've used it in many situations just to get some more clarity about the things that we really value. And we ran a little over, so I appreciate your patience with that. So let me wrap it up with just a few takeaways that I want to share with you. And I think this is one of the most important ones. Make sure that you really distinguish between what the outputs are that you perform and the outcomes are that you try to achieve with those. So if you wonder, how do I get from output to outcome? Just ask yourself, why am I doing this? And the answer to that question is probably going to be the outcome that you're looking for. So you really want to focus your key results on things that are perceived from the outside in, the things that you can influence. Key results are a perfect fit with Scrum. If you want to set product goals, then it really helps to have those key results defined in a way that your product has an influence on that. And I hope you can see the power of using value decision tables to really map the initiatives that you do to the key results that you're trying to achieve to define your to achieve your success. They're a very powerful tool that can really help you in making decisions and also explaining your decisions if you are a product owner to stakeholders that all think that their thing is the most important thing. With that, I want to wrap it up. Look me up on LinkedIn if you want to connect. If you have questions, there is still time. I have time for you to have some time for questions to answer some questions. But I also appreciate your time. You spent 10 more minutes with me, which I'm thankful for. So I hope you learned something interesting and something that you can apply in your work, maybe tomorrow or maybe some other time.
Thank you, Bas.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I think it was really insightful in terms how you can combine key results with trying to prioritize your requirements, your user stories. Yeah. And this is what I haven't seen before.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, me too. It was like the last exercise was like the unique, interesting.
Yeah, sorry I made you suffer through the prioritization. I actually didn't plan to do that, but the slide was already there. So that should have saved like 10 minutes and some suffering as well. Okay, thanks. Thank you, Victor.
Yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, we have one question in the chat.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah. In SAFe, this sort of like two-level planning is particularly prominent because that's what most of SAFe is about, right? It's like really getting the release train running. So these key results would be a very powerful tool to just give to the teams to say, well, these are the things that the organization is focusing on. What are you going to contribute to achieving those key results? So yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Yeah. Comment from
Thanks,
Tom.
Tom.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, boss, one more time for also not. We spent 10 more minutes of our time, but you spent 1 hour and 40 minutes of your time on spending with us and sharing this. So thank you very much for this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you
nice
so
evening.
much.
Yeah,
it's
it
a
was
very
great
nice
to see you, boss.
initiative. Yeah.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Later.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.